Do you remember promotional LPS? Those weird hard plastic LPS that suddenly appeared someday? I remember them being found on eBay a couple years ago, and no one really knew where they came from. We all kind of assumed that it must have been some kind of item used for toy fairs or showing off a idea for a product, since they're not really like the normal LPS that we all know. People still today are not even sure if they're actual Hasbro products, and people think that they could possibly not even be real at all. But I do think they are Hasbro products, they just were not meant to be found by the public. And for the part of the community that does also believe that, there's a lot of debate on whether or not there are fake versions of these pets. Me and the moderation team on the Littlest Pet Shop Fakes Reddit have been talking about this theory for a little bit, and since we are here to authenticate LPS, we decided it would be pretty valuable for us to look into this theory and see if we can prove or disprove it. So the first thing that I did when we got into this conversation was I went and I contacted Huntress. Huntress is one of our most educated members in this community. They know a lot about LPS. So I remember them making a post a little while ago about fake promotional pets, and I asked them about it, and they allowed me to see some of the photos again. We've been referencing these photos from Huntress, using them as our first step to figuring out any differences between the real and fake promotional pets. Purely from the photos alone, we've discovered that a lot of the fake versions, or what we are referring to as fake versions of the promo pets, are much more dull in color, and they have much more matte looking finishes as opposed to the what we believe to be real promotional pets, which are more shiny and much brighter looking. Now, it's kind of hard to tell a lot about these just from photos, so we decided to purchase some of our own promotional pets, along with some other friends of mine who very kindly allowed me to use their photos and review them in order to solidify some more information about these. Now, these pets are supposedly rare LPS. They're meant to be used in a very specific location that Hasbro would not have really produced tons and tons of them for. It would have been something like a small little batch just for presentation. So the fact that there's a ton of these just easily accessible online is a little bit iffy already. But that is just more proof that there's most definitely some kind of alternate aftermarket pet version of what we believe to be real promotional pets. For example, I bought the lot that I got straight off of AliExpress for $1. $1. That is suspicious. I know that AliExpress is often a place that you can find really cheap pets on, and they can be authentic, so I understand why a lot of people might think these are like overstock or something, because that is a lot of what is on AliExpress. But these guys, I don't really think there's much reason to have so much overstock, and the fact that it's almost always there and ready for people to buy, that's not really adding up. Now, as I was saying, pictures can be difficult to use to authenticate when you've never really had the actual item in front of you to compare to. And now that I have the actual item in front of me, I can definitively say there are fake versions of promotional pets, whether or not the original ones could be considered real or not. When my order first arrived from AliExpress, the first thing I noticed is, well, the packaging was destroyed. I never took pictures, and also it had a ton of information on the box, so I'm not gonna share that, but that was not the best introduction. When I open the pets, the first thing that I notice is that they are extremely wonky, to the point that their heads come off very easily. So they're not put together that well. and some of them can barely stand, which is not a good sign. These are the pets that I got from that AliExpress listing. So when these guys arrived, the first one that I noticed a major issue with was this guinea pig. He was the first one that I picked up and tried to move around, and yeah, really easy to remove the heads, and they do not spin properly at all. It's very stiff, and they're a really weird shape. Looks like you got cut on the edges here. Not sure what's going on with that. The colors theory also is proving to be pretty accurate. On top of poor quality in the way that it's built and changing of the paint color, there's also quite a bit of dirt and weird marks all over these pets. Most notably on this one. So, not super visible now, but when I first got him, cleaned him up, and brought him into the sun, there was a extremely noticeable maybe glue mark across his head here. Really, really weird. And I do have pictures of that, luckily. And it faded after coming back inside, so not sure what that means. Little concerning. I noticed similar marks on other pets as well, like on the bottom of this ferret, but I did not take pictures of it there. He's the one that can't stand. My current theory on the weird purple goo stuff is that it's some kind of factory glue, and not sure about the color changing properties of it or what that could mean, but it is in places that look like they would be gluing something together. So like the bottom of the ferret's head would be gluing this little neck piece into the head, probably. And on the side of the cat, it might be gluing the two pieces of the head together, or it kind of looks like it's coming from the ear, so maybe putting that into place? Not sure. But maybe it's something like that. Another notable feature about their quality is that they have tons of little pieces of them that are like scraped out of them. Like there's this huge drunkenness thing here, and right there on his chin or his cheek, and there on the other side, and then the pig has a hole in his head. So they have tons of little weird marks and things on them. Now earlier I was talking about how it's difficult to compare something to just a picture, so having a version of it in person is very helpful. And while I don't have a version of every single one of these, I do have an authentic version of the husky. So we can't use the color of the head or nose comparing the authentic and fake version, because my authentic one is actually repainted and I bought him that way. So he's not exactly what you'd be looking for, but this is what I have to compare everything else. So let's get started with that. First thing that you might notice, he has shine on him, but look at how dull the shine is. It's not really reflecting a whole lot, and it's very, very flat. Now, with this one over here, you see the shine is very, very defined on him. And you can't see it physically, but they feel different. Him, he's more like rubber, and definitely more like a hard plastic. Now, our second major thing that you can notice is that the front of the fake one over there is white. It doesn't have any gray airbrushing on the body, while this one, consistently, I've noticed the real ones have a gray airbrushing. The next thing I want to point out is on the bottom of them, you should be able to see their branding. Now, it's kind of a bad sign that that one has absolutely no damage to the branding. It's super fresh and looks like it's never been touched before. Him, on the other hand, definitely has aging, shows that he's been around for a while, was just made in a factory a couple of weeks ago. While we're looking at the bottom of them, let's take a look at their necks. So, at the bottom of the neck, or I guess the top, whatever you want to call this, you can see where there's a little gap in there, and you can pull this to the side and see they have a sort of neck peg inside of this neck, or inside of the head. You can see, you can pull this really far and see that it has a lot of mobility. Meanwhile, this one, which is much harder plastic and a lot less flexible, it does not give you that much room to pull it. And I also don't want to put too much stress on him because he's different material and much more likely to break, and it's not worth it. But you can see there's definitely a huge difference in how flexible the plastic is. It's very likely that whatever is inside of his head is going to look a lot like what this guy looks like here. Now, I've noticed a lot of variation between both the authentic and fake versions of this pet's eyes. They can look a little bit lighter or darker either way, and they often both have some little issues with their placement. So, you can see even him, he has a little gap right here, and this is just damage from aging. But on the other side, we also see little gap over here, but definitely different coloring. So, yeah. But in Huntress's photo, you may notice that even their authentic version doesn't have the exact same eyes as mine does, which shows there's at least some variation between that. Something I'm noticing just now, by the way, you can definitely see that this paw, it has the little paw print marks on it. That paint is darker than the paint used on his paws. So, if you take a look, see how dark it is over there and how light this one is? Yeah, that's just a little bit more comparison of how the fake ones have darker paint. Now, this last piece of evidence that I have is really, really strange and a little bit concerning. So recently I got the Blacklight OPS, and I was looking at them, and these guys just so happened to be nearby. And since they were nearby, they were affected by the blacklight, and I noticed something kind of gross. These guys are super covered in hopefully just paint, but something that really reacts to the blacklight. Wow, this guy had barely anything on him, and mostly would have been in the top part of him, which is definitely covered in some kind of nail polish or something. So that would be why there's any reaction there. But the fact that there was such a drastic difference between him and him under blacklight tells me these guys were not produced the same. Now, I was thinking maybe it's just my batch, it was a little weird maybe. So I decided to ask one of my friends who bought from the exact same company, factory, whatever. We bought from the same seller, so they would have all came from the same place. No, they look very gross under blacklight. So all of those pets would have been produced the same way. This gives at least a little bit of proof that there's a difference between how each of these were made. While I don't have the authentic version of a lot of these pets, I do still have photos that I can show you and what we have gathered from those. So, more specifically between each of them, we've noticed that he often has much darker colored patterning on his head and his body. So, very commonly, the fake version will look like that, as opposed to the nice lighter colored gray that the authentic version has. For this one, the most noticeable thing that I've found is this layer of the eye paint. So usually on the authentic one, it looks more like two brown colors, but on her, it has consistently looked like a dark red, maybe brownish color with a very vibrant orange color right here. So all of the ones that look like that are most likely fake ones. For this pig, the coloring of the body and the markings on her have been strikingly different, and it's almost appalling to look at how different this color is to the rest of her body, especially when compared to the authentic one, which is so much nicer and just it blends together so much better. This fish, again, similar to the pig, is just much darker in color, and I've noticed as well that the quality of the eye paint on a lot of these is pretty bad. Not to say that the authentic version is perfect, but these ones you can maybe notice a little bit more error in. For this cat, something unique that I discovered, it's consistent across the fakes that I have been looking at. They do not have a paw print on the bottom of their foot, as opposed to the authentic one, which does have a paw print. And again, this one's the one that has that weird goo on it, so gross. With this guy, I'd also be looking for darker colors or very obscure colored paws. For example, my one has a very, really pale. Doesn't take up how pale it is on camera, but they're very pale in comparison to what the authentic would look like. So that is everything that we have discovered about the fake promotional LPS. At least that's everything we know so far. Me and the rest of the moderation team for the LPS Fakes Reddit are going to continue looking at any new information that we have on these guys, and if you have any questions, we are willing to listen and answer. But that is all that I do have for now. Hopefully this could be helpful to somebody, and thank you for watching.